Hello and welcome back. In case you are new to our community, we host monthly animation challenges through our other channel, Animchallenge, to inspire you to put your skills to the test. Oftentimes, our challenges feature characters from some of your favorite movies and shows, such as Spiderman, Toy Story, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or like the current challenge, Deadpool. We wanted to give you some advice on how to make animating your favorite characters look even more authentic. So for this video, we're going to cover a few things that you can do to improve your fan animations of popular branded characters. When animating your favorite characters, it's super important to make sure you pay attention to how that character moves. Brent George talked about this in an animation review for one of our community members, who had animated this shot of Spider-Man and Deadpool.
If you're working with a branded character, you need to understand the way that branded character moves, especially comic book characters, because they usually have iconic ways of moving. So you really want to make sure you absorb that as much as possible. Make sure you study the character's IP, the IP being like the intellectual property. There's a brand to that character, iconic movement, and the way they fight needs to be understood so that it's properly represented in the animation. Otherwise, if you're working on a movie, Marvel's going to be like, no, that's not how he moves. And you're going to have to go back to the drawing board. So if you want to put this kind of stuff on your demo reel, it's a good idea to make sure that you can show the people that will be looking at your work that you know how to work on that dimension as well. It's not just about making the animation. It's not just about making it entertaining. It's not just about doing all these things, but it's also, if you put branded characters in there, that you are saying, hey, I studied this brand and I know how to make a move. I can sell you on Spider-Man. Because if it's not Spider-Man, it's something else that someone's going to hire you to work on, and they want to know that you know how to actually do the research and, do their character proud. I would highly recommend taking a look at some comic books and take a look at some iconic poses. And your references that you might be using might not be super compatible with those iconic movements. So it's going to be up to you to graft what you can into the mix.
In another Spider-Man animation review, David Gibson talked about how not animating true to the IP could completely change how an audience will perceive this character we are used to seeing in a certain way.
The fun thing about Spider-Man is that he can stretch out really quickly, and then he'll go into a ball, and then he'll spin really fast, and then come out, and then go back down. He can bend his back in either direction. He can spin. He can do all that stuff. So when this guy is a little bit stiff and not as agile and acrobatic, it makes us miss what Spider-Man's able to do. So right here, he comes over this jump. We have a little bit of an arc this direction in his torso and spine, but as he comes down here, his spine is just straight up and down right now. And what would be nicer is if, as he comes over this wall, then lands with this foot here, if his spine was actually bent back a little bit as he was coming down, he'd feel more flexible. And honestly, this guy would feel younger. Your Spider-Man feels a little bit older, and I think it's just because he's so rigid through the spine.
My back is kind of stiff from all the swinging, I guess.
Oh yeah, no, I got a middle back thing too.
If you're going to animate a branded character, it's important to study the original source material and try to understand how the original animators brought that character to life. In a review of this fan animation of Woody from Toy Story, SirWade mentioned this.
Something that I would consider, you don't have to take this note exactly, but something to think about as you work on this. Something that Disney does a lot, and something that Pixar does a lot, in particular Toy Story was really good at with a lot of the Woody shots, is acting within a pose. This is something you'll probably hear more about as you continue through Animation Mentor, as you continue through school. Having a character kind of hit a pose and not stick in it and be stuck to it in a stiff way, but to have them kind of go somewhere and then do some acting and then move into another pose. It sounds like it's going to be very pose to pose, but the idea is that you keep a character in the most interesting and entertaining pose that helps communicate their emotion and the idea behind that moment of the shot, and allow them to live there and do what they need to do, versus just having ambient motion because that's what we do. Since animation, you can kind of push it and exaggerate things. That's something to think about and something to look at in the movie, and how they'll kind of hit these graphic poses in the movie with Woody, and often they'll stick there, or they'll stay around that area to kind of let you soak it in for longer. That comes to mind here as his hands are kind of moving around. Maybe he's thinking and trying to figure out what he wants to say, but it might also just be ambient movement and the hands are moving. And do you need the motion? Is it pulling focus away from the face where the acting is actually happening, or something like that? So just things to consider.
Making the branded character look like it's from the actual movie doesn't stop at how the character moves. Sometimes even your rendering might be getting in the way. SirWade also made this interesting point while reviewing the Toy Story shot.
I like the render, looks beautiful. Although I think the glossiness is a little much. It's a little hard to even see his face. When you have characters that we kind of know already, there's an expectation for them to look a certain way and act a certain way. And from watching the movies, we know that like Woody's face and his hat, they're not quite this glossy and shiny. Everything kind of has this reflectiveness on it that it's a little distracting on the character. So I would recommend, if you are going to render it, definitely work on the shader here so that not everything in the scene is quite, because even like these little Mattel block circle things, and there's a lot of reflections. It looks cool on the table and on the lamp and on the screen, but on everything else is a little crazy, mainly on Woody.
And if you are looking to really make your fan animation shine, here's this tip about adding that extra flair from one of Brent's reviews of this Mortal Kombat animation.
I think as an animator, when you're working on a personal project, you need to like give yourself some boundaries. I think it's really important that you understand basically like you have a destination in mind. You're not just animating for animation's sake. That's fine. You can do that if you're kind of doing animation exercises. But if you're trying to put a polished piece together, you want to put on a demo reel, I think it's particularly important when there's specificity involved. Like clearly your plan and your angle here is you wanted to make the sort of intro animation for Scorpion. So the first thing that I do in a case like this is I go and I get reference. I want to take a look at what they already look like. Because ideally, what would be cool is what you end up with on the reel or wherever you're going to put this, it feels like it could be in the game. Wherever you're going to have this, like if it's going to be on a demo reel or wherever you're going to put it, I think it's just important in my mind that you could imagine this being right there in the game. Like I think people looking at it should look at it and think, oh, it could, I can imagine that being right in the game, or package it up in a slightly different way. But I think it's really like, I think if you have this in your mind, always go for reference. So I wanted to just take a quick look together with you. This is a bunch of, and this is character selection, so it's a little bit different, although it's pretty similar. Like the beginning of a fight, they do something very similar. In some cases, they might even do exactly the same thing. I think it could be pretty interesting to think about the camera, for instance, right? And think about the duration, think about lots of things, and maybe even think about like interface. Like it'd be kind of cool to mock this up in a way that makes it feel like, exactly what it's supposed to be, which is like a character intro. The reason why I bring this up is every one of these characters tries to say a little bit of something about something about themselves, like kind of their personality, and B, their fighting style. I feel like there's always something in there. It doesn't always show up, but like it often does. So anybody who plays Mortal Kombat knows that Sub-Zero is all about ice, Scorpion's all about fire. So you can see he's kind of right away, he's showing off, he's got some sort of ice elemental like kind of abilities. And then he does a quick little kind of Tai Chi or kind of kata move, and then he goes into an ice pose. Scorpion's got something similar going on. He's showing off, he's got some sort of fire element, which I think is gonna be really important. I think if you really wanna sell what you've done, it'd be extra cool if you could find a way of rendering this somewhere where you could actually put some particle effects or something like, getting an Unreal and dropping some Niagara particles to really sell the fact that he's got like fire in his hands. I think it's going to be like, it would be weird not to have that for a Scorpion intro, And like, look at all the other cool little details, like these cool like sparks and ash surrounding him. So anyways, I just think it's important because what you have is kind of like this long it's much longer in duration, and there's not really any moment of real personality. It doesn't really feel like he's squaring off against somebody else. Like here, it really feels like he's taunting, right? Like he's got eye direction that's constant. Clearly he's engaging with his opponent like a taunt. That's how all of these are supposed to feel. That's something I feel like your piece is missing. It's missing that sort of that personal level, this showmanship, and this sort of kind of like this personal antagonization. It's missing that. It's missing that rivalry, that sort of raison être. It feels like he's just going through a bunch of movement, which is not bad, but it lacks packaging. It lacks sort of like a stage so that we understand like where it would fit and what this is for.
Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to join us for this month's Deadpool Anim Challenge. We can't wait to see where your creativity takes you on this one. As always, stay tuned and stay animated.